You know, when I look around at all the entrepreneurs who are grinding it out, spending 70 to 80 hours per week growing their business, you have to ask yourself the question, at what cost? Hi, my name's Tim Uchuk, and in this podcast, we're going to be exploring the tools, tactics, and strategies for crushing it and scaling your business without making the ultimate sacrifice of your time and freedom. What's up, everyone? Tim Uchuk here. It's dark and early here on the island Monday morning. I woke up this morning. I actually went for, some of you may know, I went for surgery on Friday. I had a hockey injury on my forehead from like 10 years ago. No, more than that, maybe 15 years ago. And there was like a bunch of scar tissue there, so I had to get it removed. And I woke up this morning and I look like it's a good thing you can't see me right now. I look kind of like the Elephant Man. My eye is all swollen over and I can kind of hardly see through it. But no, it should go. Swelling should go down, and I got to get the stitches out this week. So that's all fun. But it is Monday morning, and I love Mondays. We have our weekly leadership meetings on Monday, Tuesdays. So my weeks are pretty front loaded. But for those of you that have been following this podcast, last week I was back at the office in Edmonton and just chatting with team members and just reinforcing habits. And what I wanted to share with you all today is a habit around accountability and ownership within your business. And it's pretty simple and pretty straightforward in terms of creating and generating just more accountability, more ownership. And specifically, I'm just going to go through an example and just some tips that I think might help you out. If you feel like people just can't hear you, they don't understand, and things just aren't moving forward, they aren't getting done when you're wanting to, divide and conquer among your team. So whether or not this really applies to anything, as I say pretty often, software is just a tool, right? If you use Post-it notes, if you use software, it really is just a tool. What's really important in order to drive the right habits is the system, is the process behind the tool. So you could use most tools out there and probably achieve some level of success. It really, really comes down to the process and the behaviors underneath the tool. And so to that end, the discussions that we had were just reinforcing around when we're wanting to get anything done. It could be anything. It could be, scheduling something, ordering parts, following up with someone. When we're working on something as a team, here are the things that an internal checklist for you to kind of gut check and see if you have these things in place. Because if you don't, chances are that habits are going to slip. So number one, if you're capturing something that needs to get done within your business, is it clear what needs to get done? In other words, let's say that it's got a title, let's call it a task. Is it clear, and does it have an action word? So for example, if it's, let's use the example of, ordering parts, and you just write down, this could be on a Post-it note, it could be on a whiteboard, could be on, software, on a card or something like that. If you just write down, what's a good gasket, for example, let's say you're ordering a gasket. This could be any task, really. And you just write down gasket. Now, it's not clear if you have to ask, okay, who is this for? What kind of gasket? What do we want to do with the gasket? Do we want to order it? So there should be an action word associated. It should be clear so that whoever's reading it has context. So that's number one, is clarity and an action word so you know what needs to be done. So we want to attach a verb to wherever you're putting this. Again, could be a whiteboard, could be a Post-it note, could be software. Make it clear so that people have context without having to, just by reading it, they don't have to ask questions. So that's number one. Number two is, who owns it? Who's actually working on this thing? And if that's not specified or clear, guess what's probably going to happen? It's probably not going to get done. The other area where people get stuck is that they put multiple people on it. So again, this could be a software where you're assigning multiple people. I think that people love this in terms of shirking responsibility, because it's so easy if you have more than one person owning something to say, I thought you were going to do it. So one set of eyeballs quarterbacking it, even if you've got multiple people working on it, Who is that one person who's going to make sure that this thing gets done? So assigning one owner is number 2. So number 1 was is it clear? Does it have an action word? Number 2, is there an actual owner, one set of eyeballs for this thing? Number 3, is there an expected due date where you can see it and you can see when this thing is due? So is there a date associated with this thing that needs to get done? Could be a task. Again, if it's on a Post-it, a whiteboard, what is the date? And just putting a date, by the way, without being clear on what that date means is not good enough. So we want to be specific in terms of, if you're on a whiteboard, when it's due by, so we can see that really clearly. So that's number 3. So number 1 was clarity in terms of an action word, so people can read what needs to get done without having to ask follow-up questions. What does this mean? Number 2, one owner. Number 3 is a due date. And rule of thumb, what I recommend is we work in 1-week sprints. So everything that we work on is due by the end of the week. And if it's too big to accomplish by the end of the week, we break it down. So we make that task smaller into a bite-sized chunk so that we can actually get it done. So number 3 is a due date. And number 4, let's say that the date passes and nothing has happened. We want to have, and a lot of this comes down to your culture as well, which you want to build in. Do we value getting things done on time? Do we value, the result? We've got a results-only work environment, for example. Do we value those things? Do we value punctuality as a team? Because if we don't, and by the way, this comes from the top down. If the leaders are late for meetings, guess what permission you're granting to everyone else on your team if you're showing up late in the morning. So being punctual, all of these little habits are just like making your bed, right? And again, it comes back to how you do one thing is how you do everything. So are you setting the right examples to say, this is the way we do it here? Because that's going to feed right back into, let's say that the date has passed. Let's say that you wanted to get it done October 25th. It's now November 1st, and you're just staring at it and nothing is being said. Nothing's being done. That's a cultural thing as well. So when the time passes, what we do, and we use whiteboards in some scenarios, we use software in other scenarios. But when the time passes, I see a big red overdue on that thing. And so one of our meeting agenda items is to review things that are stuck, that are overdue. And then when we look at them, now we've got clarity in terms of what was supposed to be done. We've got an owner so that we can attach who's responsible for being overdue. And then here's another tip that I would add is that as a leader and as an organization, you want to blame the system rather than the people. So if something's late, people are going at it the wrong way. Is why is this late? Are you lazy? And you're attributing all kinds of negative attributions to the person, attacking their character. The right way to go about it, if you want to create a healthy team environment, is to attack the system in terms of, what happened here? What did you run into any roadblocks? Do you need any support? So we're assuming that the person has the best intentions, and we're really attacking the system. Now, let's say that the person is actually just doesn't care and so on. We still take that approach because ultimately we're going to arrive at, all of the excuses have been taken off the table. And then the final one is, is this the right responsibility for you? Should we give this to somebody else? And then eventually you're in a respectful way, showing due process, you're giving them the option to either stay on the team, or they might have a better opportunity elsewhere. But the whole way along, you're attacking the system, not the person, which, by the way, is another one of our core values. And so when the time passes, do you have a way to see that? And so we color code things again with green and red. So if it's dry erase, we've got green and red dry erase markers so that we can see abnormalities are written in red. So for example, if it's on a whiteboard, you could write, overdue. On Post-its, way back when, what we used to do, and there's a number of tricks here to really reinforce good habits, was we used to have a to-do, doing, done board in our meeting room. And so again, this is like over a decade ago, before we started using more software in our business. But we would have these red sticky dots, and we've got our daily huddle. And every day that passed that something was overdue, we would just throw a little dot on there. And so some of these things were just full of these red dots. And then, of course, we saw there was an owner associated with it. And that was just how we showed that, the clock is ticking, and every day that passes, this thing is overdue. And we could see it without having to, you've probably heard me talk about signal to noise ratio. So I could walk into the room because we were following this practice, and I don't have to drill into the details. I could just look really clearly and see, okay, this Post-it note here has a bunch of dots on it. And so what's going on here? We got a triage. And so whenever you can, that's why there's many doors to the same house. Whenever you can set up a method where you don't have to look too deeply to see that something's abnormal, to see that something is amiss, then that's just much better for the team. And it's not hidden. It's very clear who owns it. Is it overdue, and how long has it been overdue? And so we've got a similar system on our software. But again, because we attacked the system, the situation might have changed. Maybe it's no longer a priority. Maybe we're working on something else now. Whatever the case, you want to have the ability to see that without having to drill down and look into it. So I hope that makes sense. So just to refresh in terms of, getting people more responsible, accountable, improving ownership within your business is when you have things that need to get done. Number one, is it clear? Is there an action word? So is there a verb associated with it? Does it have enough context so that the person, anyone reading it, understands what needs to get done very clearly? That's number one. Number two, one owner, one set of eyeballs. So who owns this thing? If there's no name attached, then it's probably not going to get done. If there's more than one name attached, it's easy for people to say, I thought you were going to do it. Number three, is there a due date, an expected due date? And recommended, again, use shorter time cycles. We use 1 week so that you can be forced to break things down into smaller chunks. That's number three. Number four, when the time passes, do you have a mechanism in place for to see how much time has passed, so that if something's 1 day overdue versus 10 days or 2 weeks overdue, can you actually see that? And again, a couple tips: use green and red could be dry erase markers if you're using a whiteboard. And if you're using software, there is probably, we use Trello, by the way, for a lot of this kind of stuff. And we set it up with some automations that help out with this, which we teach in our program. But some way for you to see without having to drill in the abnormalities. Again, see that you've got strong signal to noise, meaning that you can pay attention to the important things, and it's not just a bunch of clutter and noise and chaos, so that you have to just waste a bunch of your bandwidth in your brain trying to make sense of what you're looking at. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that's valuable, but that's some of the coaching in terms of our team, just to reinforce when we're working on things, to have those in place. So clarity, action words, one person responsible, due dates, and then when the time passes, you can see that the time has passed. So you can see that we're in the red. So I hope that was helpful. I'm going to start my Monday. We got a meeting in about an hour here, and I will talk to you guys soon.
Hey, Tim Uchuk here, and real quick, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, if you could take a couple quick seconds to give it a rating, it would be very much appreciated. And secondly, if you're looking for more tools and strategies on how you can crush it in life and business, just head on over to bookwithtim.com, where I've put together a free case study which shows you how to unlock unprecedented freedom today by using the 2 power levers. Just head on over to bookwithtim.com. Until next time, wishing you success and freedom in your business. Cheers.